Hey there, internet people. You're looking good. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to Wednesday's Album Club, where we're going to spend some time dissecting the 2021 release by Hypocrisy called Worship. But first, you're seeing a new face in the Album Club tonight. Rick, our buddy Rick, is joining us. We've had cancellations. Our buddy Jim couldn't make it tonight. He forgot he had a concert. He was taking his wife to. So Rick is going to be standing in for a couple weeks while TJ's out. And it's good to have you, man. Thanks for coming in on the fly and joining us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Jim thought it was more important to go throw, his panties at Adam Levine on stage somewhere in a Florida swamp tonight. So we've got the next best thing in Mr. Rick.
That's right. I've been on these things on a Friday, but never on a Wednesday. It's almost surreal. It almost feels extraterrestrial.
It does mess with your timing during the week until you get used to the pattern. Yep.
It's a pattern thing for sure. I'm used to it now, but yeah.
But no, it's great to have you on. It's been a while since I got to talk to you live, so it's really fun.
It's good.
Yeah, it's been a little while, huh?
And anybody that is not familiar with Rick's channel, it's called The Dreadful Minutes, and there is a link in the description to his channel. He would appreciate you to go over there and subscribe to his channel. He's doing some fun stuff over there for sure. New location.
Yeah.
Glenn, you're welcome. Did I pick this? I did pick this.
You did. Yep. Yeah, and so folks haven't watched any of Rick's videos lately. Rick's always hilarious. They're always good for a chuckle, and he always digs up really cool stuff that nobody else talks about. I add more stuff to my Bandcamp wish list watching Rick's videos than anybody else's videos. Seriously. So, yeah, he finds the good stuff and shares the info with the rest of us who aren't digging as deep.
I can do collection updates that frequently because I'm going to get a bill from people, and I just can't have that.
It's nice to see Jurgen in the chat. It took him more than 2 weeks to recover from the last live stream. Thank you. Hey, I was wondering what happened to you. Did we break you? I can't believe that. I mean, I figured we'd go super late afterwards, but I was a little stirred up after drinking whiskey. So anyway, good to see you, Jurgen. I'll need to get a hold of you on email to say, hey, catch up. But anyway, we might as well get into this. I've got a little bit of history on the band. Anybody have anything to add before I jump into this?
No, I think we're good.
Well, I learned what the word hypocrisy was back when I was a teen because of the band.
Okay. Learning with Rick Contreras. Well, I've just kind of a brief history here. Peter Tägtgren, the main visionary of the band, he spent 3 years in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and was inspired by the bands in the scene there. He returned home to Sweden in 1990 to form Hypocrisy. The only other original member is bassist Mikael Hedlund. Their first few albums may have received a bit of criticism for lacking in excitement and overall originality, but the band evolved into more of a melodic force after 14 albums and nearly 30 years of existence. And we're going to be talking tonight about this album, Worship. It was recorded at Abyss Studio between 2018 and 2020 by Peter Tägtgren himself, released by Nuclear Blast in 2021. So, Rick, let's start with you. What is your first impression of Worship?
Well, it's I actually forgot about Hypocrisy for a little while there since their last album, End of Disclosure, and I was actually really digging the cover art because here's why. Because I like the band best when the album art is more obscured and kind of mysterious, because they kind of remind me of X-Files, so I like the shadow work and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But then when you look at End of Disclosure, it's all out in the open. It's like having sex with the lights on. It's like, it's like, give me a little bit of something to, some kind of mystery. So I think Worship kind of brought some of it back, even though there's still a lot going on, on the cover. It's like, they went for the source glorious epic piece of scenery, but, it still felt like the more interesting eras when they were coming out with some of the covers that I've enjoyed. So that was a good sign. That was a good sign for me. I'm like, okay, this is something I could dig into. When it dropped, what was it, back in November? I think it was. So it was a no-brainer. I'm like, okay, new Hypocrisy, but I already know what they sound like. And I didn't actually jump on the album right away. I was watching the music videos as they dropped because there was just so much other stuff coming out at the time, you know. So I'm like, I'll get to it. But the videos are pretty good, you know. So eventually I'm like, okay, I can kind of bypass the Stormkeep turn after the 50th listen and hop on the Hypocrisy. And overall I ended up enjoying it. You know, it's nothing I would say that's out there and crazy different from the last one, but it's just good apple pie. You know, it's like you like it.
All right, Alan, what are your thoughts?
Well, kind of like Rick, I hadn't paid a lot of attention to the band all that recently. So this is the first time I've sat down and listened to any newer Hypocrisy in quite a while. So didn't really know what to expect. Like, have they kind of drifted or changed over the years? You know, has the sound been mixed around? This is also their first release in quite a few years. So it's like, are they going to do something very different? Don't know. But no, within a couple of songs, it's just like, this is exactly what Hypocrisy sounds like and should maybe always sound like. So yeah, I was really happy with it on first impression. It sounded very strong. We'll get more into the songs and such, but it had a good balance of like fast versus slower songs and such. So yeah, I was quite impressed with it. I was like, that's a damn good Hypocrisy album. I'm glad they have not lost the plot. So yeah, it definitely. My immediate reaction to it was thumbs up. The band is still exactly on course.
Right on. For me, like Rick, I mean, I started off by I was a little late buying this record. I didn't expect it to be anything, super drastic of a change, but I did remember watching I think it was the video for Dead World, where it was like all these zombies chasing this woman through a complex, and the initial riffs it reminded me very new metalish. Someone mentioned it had some Catch-22 vibes, which that album to me sounded like them flirting with new metal a little bit, and I hated that record. I'm like, oh boy, is this what it? I mean, the song got better and good. And in fact, in the album, if you take it out of context of the album, it sounds a little more new metal-y than it does mixed in with the rest of the album, which is weird. But then there was another video after that. I think it was Chemical Horror. Much better, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get this record. There's two songs here. One I like, one I'm not sure on. And first impression is it's Hypocrisy being Hypocrisy. They're just kind of celebrating their career, is what it sounds like on this album to me. It's very solid. It's produced very, very, very well. I know our friend Mr. Brain Smasher hates all things Peter Tagner when it comes to his production skills, but he just has a very modern ear for producing this type of music, and it suits Hypocrisy very well. They're a band that hasn't really changed much over the years, ever since their big change. But they've maintained a very modern style, which I guess we're going to probably get in here too. Next topic is, well, for me, 30 years of Hypocrisy, and they still sound fresh. I mean, let's discuss the band's evolution and how they dwell within the modern death metal realm. Rick, what do you think?
Well, I told myself I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to have to compare one band to another. And this is another Swedish band. So how do you know you have a good apple? You compare it to a bad apple. And so take Modern In Flames. And what is it that they're doing that I don't like, that Hypocrisy is doing that I do like? When it comes to the melodic death metal type of bands, and like you were saying, not everybody likes Peter's production style, but I think most people do. And he's been involved with whole bunch of bands.
Pain, Landforman's
Abyss.
Abyss.
Yeah, he's done stuff for even the Norwegian bands, Enslaved. He's done some excellent work with a lot of bands. So he has a sort of signature there. When I think of production, just production legends in Sweden, I think of him and Swano, right? Those are like the two big names that come up. Sort of the guys to call up to come in and rescue, right? When Swano's not available, maybe you go to Peter. But I think that, overall, you have a huge advantage when you're able to have the engineering ability and also be involved in that, which is your band at the same time, instead of relying on a third party to. He has his vision. He can sort of materialize that vision, and I think that over time, clearly it shows. And you mentioned Pain. I remember getting into Pain back in the even back when Rebirth came out, and I remember at the time thinking like, man, how's this going to affect his Hypocrisy project?
It was like a very commercial Hypocrisy. I mean, it was all the poppy aspects. He took it away from Hypocrisy to keep Hypocrisy pure, I'm sure.
And over time, Pain became even more poppy sounding.
It was a big band. Yeah.
I remember reading an interview with Peter on how whenever he had to go back to do another Hypocrisy album, he kind of had to learn how to do the harsh vocals again, because he was doing a lot more of that clean singing with his Pain project. And I don't even attempt to do that kind of singing, so I can imagine how difficult it must be to transition both worlds. The guys like Ackerfeld can do it seamlessly, but doing that, it's a bit of an exercise. So I always think like, okay, so we got a band like Hypocrisy, and does he come in with an engineering mindset first, and then he tries to sort of just tack on the ideas on top of that, or vice versa? But in my mind, I usually see him as, just because he's done so many albums that I love, has worked on and produced with so many people, like mixing, engineering, you name it, that I look at him as sort of this Alex Van Halen type, where he has a sort of this engineering mechanical mindset of being able to do kinds of cool stuff with music. But and then he will put in this, because he's got the alien thing. Like he can always fall back on that. He doesn't have to come up with the whole out there 180 concept with every album. He sort of has this thing that he can always latch onto with the Hypocrisy project. And I think that what he did here, it shows that the transition, it's not too abrupt with the changes, except maybe Catch-22. He doesn't do well when he's trendy. That's a thing, that it's like when he tries to latch too much on the influence of what's going on outside. I think he's better in his own bubble and kind of just doing what he does best, which I think has showed throughout his releases. Hard, long-winded way to explain that.
That's okay. And how about you? After 30 years, we're talking about them still sound fresh and discussing their evolution, how does it sit with you?
It sits pretty good with me, although there's a big sort of hole in the center of that. I kept up with this band really closely through the 90s, but by the turn of the century, I guess I had gotten a little bored with them. They had very much, found their lane after the Fourth Dimension. Like you said in the intro, those first two albums are pretty different. Starting with the third album, it always bothered me that the third album was called The Fourth Dimension. It's just like, that hurts the numerical part of my brain. But from that point forward, they changed sound and found a very good particular style that worked well for them. But they also cranked out a lot of albums. I was just trying to count a minute ago, and they did something like 7 albums. So by the end of the 90s, I was kind of a little tired of them. The albums weren't getting bad, but it felt like the albums were getting a little bit samey. That you knew what the formula was going to be. A few fast songs, a few slow songs, 1 or 2 in between production. There wasn't going to be too much variation. And so I kind of, lost track of them as we headed into, the early 2000s. But, that's always, the upside and the downside. When a band can find, kind of a unique lane to be in, like Hypocrisy did, they have a really good balance of brutality and melody. They're not too much of one or the other. Yeah, they haven't turned into, an In Flames kind of thing. They haven't turned into a band that just went, more and more brutal for the sake of trying to be more and more brutal either. They've kept it in a nice balance. That's great. It's, it's their thing. Not a lot of bands do it as well as they do. But you also do run the problem of your albums can start to run together when you're not mixing it up. We've all, the classic joke, of course, is, AC/DC having 10 albums that sound exactly alike until you stop and count and realize there's actually 11 that sound exactly alike. Hypocrisy, kind of got that way a little bit too. It's just like, because I remember distinctly, I'd put a bunch of, my favorite songs together on a CDR back then, and I couldn't tell you which one was from The Abducted versus which one was from the self-titled versus which one was from the final chapter. It's like, all a bunch of good Hypocrisy songs. They're good songs, but yeah, the albums just became a bit of a blur. So yeah, I don't really know what they've done. I know, of course, the Catch-22 faux pas was there, but in terms of what they've done with some of the other albums, I'm not sure how that has or hasn't changed. If this is more of a coming back to their classic sound, or if they've just kind of chugged away steadily on these other albums. But yeah, this album, at least, it kind of picks up right where I left off with the band there, in the very early 2000s. So Marty, you probably know a lot more about that. I've got some missing time here that not sure what went on.
And a sore butt. What does that
fuzzy
mean?
Images of little gray people. Maybe that was just Rick. I don't know.
Missing time and a sore butt.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know what the band's legacy is during that period, but it seems like, yes, from this album back to, I guess, their heyday when they were very, very popular with, the Hypocrisy Destroys Whackin' and albums and such, they seem to have stayed on course quite nicely.
And the Live in Sophia Blu-ray and live album is really, really good too. Really good. Really well done.
Haven't seen or heard that one. Yep. So what do you think on this, Marty? You've got a better grasp on their whole catalog than I do.
Well, for me, their evolution was quick. I mean, I think Peter probably realized pretty quickly that the path that they were on, although I like Penetralia, I like Obsculum Obscenum, that little EP they put out as well. I can't remember. Inferior Devotees. There was some good. It was good. It's solid. I still will pull those out and listen to them, but it wasn't until Fourth Dimension. And even that to me is a very transitional album, but they started to embrace the melody, and it really gave them a unique voice. I mean, there's, they could be lumped into with bands like Insomnium and, stuff like that, real melodic bands that walk the line between melodic death metal and maybe a little black metal influence in a bit. But for me, Hypocrisy the way they were produced themselves and embracing more of that atmosphere and that melody, I think they fit within the modern death metal realm really well, because it's so well produced and they've just got that lofty feeling. Me and Chris, the bass player from The Glorious Dead, we're talking when I first got this record, we're talking at practice. He's like, Hypocrisy is one of those bands that I've always liked, but I'm never in the mood to listen to. He says but when I am, it's like a mood thing. They're a mood band for me. And that kind of struck me. It's very prevalent on this album. This is a very, very moody album. It's very atmospheric. There's a ton of like really weighty melodies on here that the album might not be real, the dynamics between super fast and mid-paced and slow is not really there. It's kind of an album that does this with a couple blips here and there as far as aggression, but it's so well written. He knows what he's doing. He knows where he's at within his lane. He knows how to write a Hypocrisy song, and when it's done well, as on this album, it really clicks. And I think with a super bright production, they fit really well within. They sound like modern atmospheric death metal to me. Oops. Where'd everybody go?
I'm over here.
Oops, I must have hit a button. I hit the mouse.
I thought you were going to say we got abducted, but
But that kind of boils into the next topic. We're going to talk about identity. I mean, by embracing melody back on the Fourth Dimension, Hypocrisy seemed to embolden their longevity. How well has this band cultivated their identity and their sound? What do you think, Rick?
I try to make that comparison with a band like In Flames, and what works and what doesn't. But I think you nailed it. With the album, felt very even flow. Except for that song "Dead World," which is very bassy. I think that was actually his son who was involved in the writing of that.
Oh, really?
Which is probably why it felt out of place. And I think that was the first single to drop.
It was very new metal. It had a very modern feel to it.
I remember watching the video, before listening to the song without the video, and just getting all distracted with all the zombies, to really think about it that heavily. But I was thinking like, oh man, I do kind of like the song, but I hope the rest of the album's not like this.
Right.
Like I was looking for a little more. Right. I think that's the only really point in the album where it sounds a little bit out of placey than everything else. But I think it has a really, really good flow. I think it's it gets heavy and it's almost because we got Horde doing the drumming, and it being a what you call Swedish act, but I think having a Norwegian drummer, a very good one, on board really helps with that sound. And I think over time, even I noticed that on End of Disclosure, there's a bit of this sort of industrially kind of undertone with because you got this atmosphere happening, and then you have sort of this sort of almost mechanical. And I get it; it's space, it's sort of this sort of extraterrestrial thing. Plus the stuff he's been doing with Pain, it seems like sort of this natural progression that some of it will leak into Hypocrisy sound, and I did get some of that, but it's not as cold sounding as the older material. I mean, you go back to like the Arrival and those albums, and you hear like the production difference as far as the temperature of the album. I feel like it's a little more. It's more of a cooler fog, but it's not as cold as the older material, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Alan, you're there. Let's talk about their identity. What do you think?
Yeah, like you said, the first two albums are fine. I like them. They're not something I reach for very often at all, though. And I've always kind of thought if the band had stayed on that track, they could have very easily have gotten lost in a crowded field. Don't know. I know a lot of people really like those two albums and rank them quite high, and they are good.
Yeah.
But would the band have really persevered long term if they had stuck to that sound? Who knows? Maybe, but it would have been tougher. I think by going in the more melodic direction and establishing that sound that was more unique, it helped their visibility and memorability quite a bit. And at the same time, like we all said before, they didn't completely go, full on, melodic. They kept a very heavy, dark sound. And it's always sort of been about the balance between those two things for this band. That, how often do they want to crank up the speed? How often do they want to get, real sort of, full of vitriol and spiteful sounding? And how often do they want to kind of gear it down and get that really slow, dark, almost doomy aura to the music? And more often than not, they get a really good balance between those two things, which for them, it sounds very natural. They're very good at it. I think for a lot of bands, it would be hard to establish that kind of balance between those two extremes, that it would either be too jerky or too jarring, or they do one well, but they wouldn't be nearly as good at the other end of the spectrum. And Hypocrisy got that down quite well, which is, I think, one reason they've had the longevity they had and that they've stood out. The albums are not just 40 minutes of full throttle death metal, and they're not 40 minutes of just slow, draggy, dark stuff either. They are able to go back and forth within any given album and keep mixing it up. And so, yeah, I think that was always a big thing for the band's success.
Yeah, I agree. And the identity, as stated earlier, they realized it mostly on Fourth Dimension, fully realizing it on Abducted, the album that came after it. I love that record. But Fourth Dimension is a bit of a transitional album that's really good. But they found their sound, and then they don't really need to evolve anymore. They found a really good sound that doesn't sound like anybody. Not very many people sound like them, because Peter's vocal style is very unique. He's got a very tortured scream, and he can take it super low as well, as he demonstrated on the Bloodbath. Oh fuck, why can't I remember? Blasphemy of what the fuck's that second Bloodbath album? I can't remember. Rick, help me out here.
The second one, the one with the four faces on the cover. What the heck's it called?
Why am I drawing? This is what onset dementia looks like, people. Nightmares Made Flesh. Oh my god. Well, Peter sang on that album, and he crushed it. I mean, you could really see, how crushingly low he can be. And yeah, thanks, Eddie. and Devin and Drunken and everybody. Thanks. Yeah. Help this old man down the road.
The chat's got your back.
Right on. But I lost my train of thought. I don't know. The melody is he embraces it really well, but he knows when to break out of it. And even though this album might be very much even paced, the songwriting is so well done. It really shows how, he's really cultivated this sound over the years, and he didn't have to push it or evolve with each album. He really found his sound after 3 albums, and it gives him the space to actually write good songs, which he has done quite a bit of. I mean, you might not love every song on every album. Like I said, Catch 22 was a big turd for me. And like me and Rick were talking in the dugout before Alan came on, that it was so bad they had to re-record it. And I didn't even listen to the re-recording of it. I don't know, if you can, if they rewrote the songs, maybe, but other than that one faux pas, I mean, I think I've got all the rest of their stuff, and it's solid. It's solid. And that brings us to discussion, the musicality and composition of Worship. What do you think, Rick?
I think it fell into what you were talking about earlier. It's very evenly paced. Although that said, the songs don't wear out their welcome. I almost feel like even when you watch how many singles they dropped for that album, it felt like it's very everything is sort of contained in a nice little space. The nice 3-4 minute, I think 5-minute structure. I don't think there's any song here that's longer than 5 minutes. Maybe a little bit longer. But it's 50 minutes. It's I think it's just the right length runtime for something like that. I think that I think the only thing I would say is Chemical Horror. I love the intro to that and the way it comes in kind of a little slowly. I feel like that was more appropriate for like an opener. I know that was one of the big single. I think that one came out of the Dead World, right? And looking at the stylization, looking at the videos, they use that. They use a certain studio, I think a dude named Costin, who has this very distinctive art style, and a lot of his videos look like that. I think it felt very appropriate for something like Hypocrisy. Has that sort of this eerie, but modern, yeah. And that's what this is. It's very modern sounding. It's a lot of people would say, hey, I wish they could go back to that fourth dimension sound and whatnot. But it's very, I think they've matured along the way. Where I don't think they have any interest in doing that, going very abrupt with the riffs and very, very what you call it, dissonant and disjointed. It's just not their style. I think with this, it's sort of everything's about flow, and it goes very well. I think that one of my favorite tracks here is "Children of the Grey," which it's a very melodic song, and it's a nice breakup from Brotherhood of the Serpent, which I think is one of the hardest songs here. It's one of the heavier tracks. At least the way it begins. I like the pacing, but they remember to take a nice change midway through their tracks. And I noticed this as it progresses, that throughout the middle of the song, they have to sort of way to sort of break things up, and by the time they get to the end, they like to end on a sort of nice melodic note. Not every song, but I think most of the songs are kind of just structured that way, which is pretty good.
Yeah. Alan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think everything on it, sounds pretty good, and I think Rick, found kind of the key word. The album's got a really good flow to it. Nothing's too long, nothing's too short. You've got the faster, more aggressive tracks, but they're interspersed, with those slower, darker tracks. And the sequence is just very, very good. It's not like there's a section in the middle with, 3 really slow songs back to back where, folks that don't like those numbers as much may get a little bored. And there's not, 3 or 4, crushers in a row that start to just kind of run into one long, slam before they gear it back down. The album is paced very, very nicely. That was one of the first things that jumped out to me after listening to it. It's just like, it's 50 minutes, reasonable length, but it never feels like it's going, too fast or too slow. Rick mentioned, the transition from Brotherhood of the Serpent to Children of the Grey. Even backing up another song before that, you've got, We're the Walking Dead, which is one of the slower ones. And then with Brotherhood, you've got, the more aggressive section. And then Children of the Grey, you've got the more melodic section. So they keep mixing it up, but it all flows together very nicely. It does not have a problem of jumping back and forth too drastically. That is something that could really disrupt an album like this. If you're screaming 1 second and then the next second you're going for your calm, mellow sound, that's something that can irk me, with some of these, melodic death metal bands. But Hypocrisy on this album in particular, it's very well balanced in all those regards. They switch back and forth seamlessly, and it works well at both ends. So I really like the way it's put together. It sounds good, and it's structured really, really nicely.
Fully agree with both of you guys. And for me, I'm a big fan of doom metal, but so I rarely listen to it unless I'm in the mood for doom metal. But when I'm listening to doom, I constantly want more variation. I want more dynamics instead of just slow and dreary the whole way. And we've established that this album is kind of a mid-paced. There's not a lot of huge dynamic shifts, but the songs are so well written it doesn't matter. And there's enough life and flow in the songs. The melodies, I mean, We're the Walking Dead the melodies are so huge and so smart and well placed, and the way they carry throughout the song with the heavier guitars filling in the foundation, it's just really well. It's very much a formula for Hypocrisy, but they do it so well. It's their sound. It's what they've built this whole career on, doing that after they made the shift. And I just hearing it on this album done so well. I mean, there's like a couple albums before Virus. There's a lot of super aggressive songs. I liked it. I mean, I've liked pretty much everything they've done, but this one is just them really embracing that atmosphere. And I really like that. And it really shows the strength of the songwriting. And, I do believe this is Horg's last album. I think he announced that he's left the band, but, I do want to comment. Alan posted Eddie's comment, but this is a good point. The remarkable thing about Hypocrisy is that most fans like their first two albums and the later albums. Few bands retain fans after significant sound change. That's true, man. I mean, look at In Flames. They're a mellow death band that were fucking killer. They put out the Jester Race, which is one of my all-time favorite melodic death metal albums. And they just went totally new metal. And it's the people that like them now probably came in when they were new metal. They weren't fans like us that liked them when they were more death metal minded. And I just thought that was a great comment. And
I think it's interesting. Like I said earlier, I don't think he's best when he's trying to be trendy or following, whether he's conscious of it or not. But the work he did with Bloodbath, I think he works really well with like a super group format too when he needs to be. And I think he's done some of his best vocal work, that I've enjoyed through a band like that. So nice contrast, kind of seeing both ends of it.
He's one of those guys, working for Bloodbath, and back in the day too, he was a touring guitarist for Marduk on one of their tours. They were short a guitar player, so he stepped in and did the tour, got all painted up and did the whole thing, which is cool. And then going from that to something super commercial like Pain, or working on that Landferman project where, they had a falling out, I believe, but he did that duo with him again for a more commercial Rammstein crowd for sure. But he's a very diverse character, but he knows what the underground is about, and he's been there as well. So and he never lost sight of it either, which is also to be for sure saluted. But let's talk about the production. Rick, what do you think?
One quick, sorry, Marty, just to quickly interrupt with a fun little thing following up on your In Flames comment about the fans maybe being newer. Shortly before COVID became a huge problem everywhere, I was out playing cards one night, and one of the other guys at the store I was playing at had on a In Flames t-shirt, just kind of a generic logo thing. And so at some point I was just like, hey, that's a cool band. I saw them live back in '99 when they were playing in the US for one of the first times. And he just kind of looked at me and was just like, I was 2 years old then. So I'm just like, I don't believe he was too familiar with, Lunar Strain or any of that material.
No, probably not.
On to the production now.
What do you think about the production, Rick?
First, let me put it into context. When the last one came out, back in like 2013, so they take it like a nice 9-year gap, or it's a 9 year, something like that. Up to now, a phenomenon has happened in death metal. We had this sort of the maggot stop bands, and that whole phenomenon kind of trend took over. And I think a lot of death metal bands have took on a more doomier turn. You said you like doom metal, and a lot of bands are going that direction. So when Worship dropped, again, Hypocrisy are they're on what, Nuclear Blast. So
Yep.
and that's a big label, So often, some people may just ignore some of the big label bands, and and they're like, oh, they're not on the ground enough for me or whatever, Again, but this band being consistent as they are, it was refreshing to see something from Hypocrisy. But I can't say like, oh, I've really been missing and really itching for a new Hypocrisy album, because because they're just so consistent. Like, it's like this is why beginning of the stream I said when this dropped, I was like, it's cool, but I didn't jump right in and listen to it immediately and ripped open the packaging and I must listen to it right now.
I didn't either. I was late getting it. Yeah.
People were talking about it, and I have heard some mixed opinions on this. Not everything was 9-10 glowing reviews. I think a lot of the criticism may have been because they are consistent. Some people actually didn't like the cover. I can see why with all this stuff going on. I dug it, but from a production standpoint, I think that what is the signature sound for that band besides just Peter's production? From the musicianship, this guy can do it all. But praise to Michael, who's been with Peter, I think since the beginning, right? He's been here with almost for the whole ride, and it's just sort of he's just as important to the sound. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they do after this without Horg, and whether they're going to continue that. I don't see why they would deviate so much from the sound that's already been working for them. Someone mentioned the Abyss earlier, and that's a great project. It's more black metal leaning. And I would love to see another Abyss before they do another Pain album. But I think we're likely going to see another Pain album, and that might have an effect on the sound of whatever the next thing they do with this. But this is very timely. I think they spend and just a nice length of a break to put out something like this to let his craft mature into what this turned into. I do hear the differences between this and End of Disclosure, and it does sound a little warmer. There's a lot more focus on melody. You do have your hard-hitting moments, but they're not so dependent on it as it was on their last album, even like compared to like The Arrival and releases like that. I think this is they hit a sweet spot with this, and as a sound you can get when you have a nice big expensive studio on the big label, and you have the technical ability to engineer something like this. But it's very welcome. I've been listening to a lot of the underground bands and Magaston bands and this stuff. When this dropped, I'm like, this big commercial album was actually a nice break from what I was listening to.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, Eddie is asking you, Rick, is that a OG release of Aggressor's Never-Ending Destiny in the background?
Unfortunately, it's not. Great album, though. It reminds me of Transformers in a lot of ways.
More than meets the eye. Hey, Alan, what are your thoughts on the production?
To be honest, the production hasn't really stood out one way or the other for me. It sounds fine. There's nothing that makes me immediately think the production has taken this album to another level. But there's also nothing about the production that immediately stands out as like, that's too loud, or that's buried, or that's the mix is somehow bothering me somehow. So I've got no problems with it, but yeah, I haven't picked up anything in particular one way or the other that I think gets it extra points or costs it any points.
Yeah. And as Noah's stating here, the guitar sound on this album is completely crushing. It is. I like underground production, but as I get older, I really appreciate a lot of money behind it, polished, booming production. And that's what this album has. You put this in the vehicle with a decent system and turn it up. It just sounds clean and pure and heavy as shit. And the guitars just really cut into you. everything is mixed absolutely perfectly, pristine. It's the way it should be. It's on a big label. It should sound really good. And this album does, man. It's just, like I said, you turn it up and it doesn't falter any. It gets louder, but better. I mean, it's just so perfectly mixed. And I highly doubt these were mic'd guitars. I'm sure it's all, amp sims or whatever, but he found a sound that sounds like Hypocrisy, and sits in the mix perfectly well. Yeah, let's talk about favorite and least favorite songs. What you got, Rick?
That was actually a tough question, because that is the contradiction, right? It's just because it all flows so well, so evenly. I can play this in the background and really loud and not have to turn one song down or one up a little more, because it was done at a different studio, whatever, or different sessions and whatnot. I wouldn't expect that from Nuclear Blast anyway. But I would say when you got to They Will Arrive and Bug in the Net, like the last few tracks, it's kind of when I kind of just tuned out just a little. But they went right back into it with Gods of the Underground, and there's a lot of variation in there too. I think it's just ended on a good note. But I can't say any of these tracks are bad. I think there's no song here I would skip. I kind of just let it play.
Yeah.
And I put this in the car and I'm okay. I just let it run. There's some songs maybe Dead World I don't need to hear again. It just but if it's on, I don't mind it. I let it play. But it's I love the way Worship opens. Where the Walking Dead, from Dead World to Where the Walking Dead, it's a nice change up. They're both Dead related, but very different.
Right.
But I don't have anyone I could say I have a particular favorite, or one that I dislike a lot. Like I said, I might have been a little harsh with They Will Arrive and Bug in the Net, but that's because it was already so late in the album, and by then I was already well into 40 plus minutes into the album, and these songs did not really offer something that as far as sound structure wise that the previous tracks didn't, I think, overall.
Right on. Alan, what were your faves?
Let's take a look here at the track list. There are a lot of pretty good standout moments on this one. I'll preface this by saying that typically with Hypocrisy, I'll usually favor those slower, darker, doomier songs a little bit over the aggressive ones. But even the more aggressive ones sound pretty good on here. I like Worship. It's got the little intro, but it quickly builds up to something much more aggressive. It worked really good. Chemical Horror's been discussed. That's got a really heavy crushing sound to it,
and very apropos lyrics too, very relevant in today's pharmaceutically addicted culture.
Yep. I think it was Glenn mentioned in the chat earlier, Greedy Bastards. No one's mentioned that track, but that's actually a very good one that, again, has a little
very
bit more
apropos,
of that angry vibe to it.
Yeah.
Dead World hasn't really bothered me that much. It does stand out, as being a little bit different, but at least through this first handful of plays I've done over the past several days, I wouldn't, like Rick said, I wouldn't skip the song if it's playing. Favorites would probably be We're the Walking Dead and Children of the Grey. Again, those are the ones that have that go again for that slower, doomier, darker aura, and those are always the Hypocrisy tracks that kind of stand out the most to me.
I can feel the alien fog coming out when I hear these tracks, seeping out of the spaceship.
Yep, for sure. In terms of a least favorite, let's see. Brotherhood of the Serpent isn't bad, but being sandwiched between the two tracks I really like, I do sometimes, blank out on it a little bit. And like Rick said, Bug in the Net, I don't mind it. That song is maybe the one that reminds me the most of a Hypocrisy song I've heard before on several other albums. It's like that song sounds very, very much like stuff they were doing in the late 90s, and as such, that one maybe feels a little tired, but it could be, as Rick said, just its placement in the track list too, that you're kind of getting to the end of the album. It certainly isn't anything new, and that one to me felt like maybe just a little bit too much of a throwback to older songs. But nothing on here that immediately was like this song completely misses the mark or is a stinker. really, really solid. A lot of standout moments. Even, and I was impressed. It didn't take long to find them. This was not an album I had to play 4 or 5 times and let it grow on me. Even after the first playthrough, I was immediately like, okay, I like that song. I liked that song. I liked that song. Let's run this back and see what other ones I may have can add to the list.
If I may add, he's had years to tweak those knobs, since the last release to get this just right and hone it in. And it's not like it's like they just put out an album last year. It's like, oh shit, you gotta drop something soon, and just a sketchbook with stuff and we just throw something together. I don't get that feel at all.
No, definitely not.
No, it definitely does not sound rushed. Least favorite for me when it was initially Dead World. Like I said, it struck me as a little new metal inspired, but in the context of the album, I like it a lot better. But when it was pulled out as its own single, it bugged me. It's kind of like that 9 Inch Nails, I Want to Fuck You Like an Animal song. I can't remember the name of that song. On its own, in the video, the song kind of bugged me, but in the context of the album, it seemed completely fine. That album flows perfectly, and in this album, Worship, it has a great flow to it. It's paced very well. The song, the way they layered it on here is kind of perfect. That was my least favorite, but I ended up warming up to it. I did like the video for it. My faves were The Walking Dead and Bug in the Net. Everybody's giving Bug in the Net shit, but I liked the expansive quality of those 2 songs. Another Day is more aggressive. I like Chemical Whore a lot. Worship, like Alan, I think it was Alan said, it starts off and it builds up to a good aggressive feel. That's where your aggression is. Another Day is a very aggressive song, but it's not like blast beats super crazy. It's just more aggressive. It's interesting. It's interesting how they kind of avoided that, the blast beat thing. And you got a guy like Horg sitting behind the kit. You think you'd want to hit the kill switch and okay, blast for 45 minutes. We'll catch up with you at the end. But no, man.
I found this more industrial-ish. I wouldn't quite call it industrial, but it has that bit of that timing measures that kind of reminds me of that. Again, it might be because the influence with Pain, even though Horg didn't play in Pain, but I feel like some of the influences kind of leaked on there through working with Peter.
Right. Yeah, and plus, really clean drum sound too gives it that mechanical feel as well. But let's wrap it up here with judgment, final thoughts. Alan, we'll start with you this time. We'll mix it up a little bit.
Sure. Final thoughts were, wow, this is a great album. This was a band I'd been meaning. They've been close to the top of my, I need to revisit and freshen up on their catalog for a while now. I had replayed the early stuff a few months ago, but then I never got past the 4th dimension. Another box arrived or another exam was coming up. I ended up switching gears and didn't get to hear more. But yeah, with this album, again, I wasn't sure what the band was up to. It'd been several years since they'd done anything at all. A lot can change over time. But no, this one struck a really nice chord right away. I want to keep playing it and probably be picking this one. If any of the local stores have it, I will buy this off the shelf. Absolutely no problem with that. I think it's a good album, and it does everything I want Hypocrisy to do, and it does it very well. So yeah, I'll give it 2 thumbs up.
So do you think you're going to track down older stuff that you may have missed too, like the Out of Curiosity, if it turns up cheap?
If Hypocrisy is always one of those, if it's $5 in the CD bin, yes, you take my money. Again, I've been meaning to go back through their catalog anyway for a while. Whether I can get them to the front of the line right away, we'll see. But
it's a long line.
It's a long list. It always is. But yeah, I've been wanting to revisit the 90s albums, and yes, I've been wanting to check out at least some more of the early and mid 2000s stuff that I haven't heard. Like I said, I think Catch-22 was probably the last one I heard anything
Not a
from.
good album.
Yeah, and even that one, it was just like I listened to it to see what all the fuss was about. It's just like, oh yeah, that's not good.
And if you're gonna do it, you'll get the version 2008 before that one.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll definitely go back and check out some of those other albums when I get a chance. Am I going to rush out and do it tomorrow? No, I got other things to tend to before that, but I will check out the pieces of their catalog that I've missed. Yes.
Awesome.
Cool.
How about you, Rick? Final thoughts, judgment.
Well, it's a very welcome drop. When I need a break from the father files and pharmacist and that kind of stuff, I want a nice big label listen. This is a band where you want to go, where does melodic Swedish death metal stand? What is the benchmark? And here you go. Like, it goes with Hypocrisy. Even if you don't like Peter, you're not a fan, you still got to appreciate this is a guy who does it all. It's just he's able to you can at least appreciate being the front man and just the guy behind the studio and everything. It's just really cool. I just seeing it's just an amazement that someone can accomplish all that, despite whether you're a fan of the work or not. Just doing that kind of role is a lot itself. But however, I think it's very timely. I think that had they released like 3-4 other albums in between this that sounded kind of like this, I would have been like, I might have not been as excited. Even when this dropped, I was like, okay, there's Hypocrisy. If they release another album in another 2 years or so, and it's something in this range, and I wouldn't mind it. It's like that uncle or cousin that drops by, every other holiday or whatever. You don't want them around all the time, but you don't mind and eat some of your.
He gets you drunk, and it's fun and
fun
right.
for a day or two, and then you start wondering when exactly they're going to leave, and you get a little break.
Yeah, you don't want to overstay its welcome, just like this doesn't.
Right. All right. My final thoughts. This hit me in a very nostalgic place, I guess. I listened to this and, it put me in mind of Abducted and the self-titled and that middle era of Hypocrisy that I spent a lot of time with, and I really liked it. I'm glad I picked it up. Like I said, I picked it up late after the fact, and it took me a while to start spinning it, and it took me a while to get into it, but once you get familiar with those songs, it unlocked that expansive world that this band is really good at. And I'll probably revisit End of Disclosure and Virus here a little bit more this week, but because of it, just to refamiliarize myself with it and see if it's as good, if it holds up as good as this one has. But they came out with a great record. I don't know what's going on with the band. He made a claim that MDF and this little tour thing they did was going to be their last time playing America type of thing. I don't know what that means, other than, obviously pandemic times, it's hard for any band to travel over here. I mean, you don't know if you're going to get stranded, if things get locked down again or what, but yeah, I mean, to all of you that went and saw them at MDF, I know Devin saw them and a bunch of other people did too and said they were great. I watched them. Someone posted a video and they sounded amazing. They sounded great. And this completely pro band. So I don't know if this is going to continue. I hope so. I mean, but if this was the last one, I would say they ended on a great record, but I'm sure it's not the last one, but we'll see what happens. We're all getting old.
To see who the next drummer announcement's going to be, if
yeah.
they go, I don't see him going programmed on this, maybe with Pain, but not
right.
You need a live drummer.
Is there what's up with the bass slot too? I noticed over here on the Mothership. Appropriate. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that one. But under the lineup for this album, it's got Headland listed on bass, but actually says credited but does not play, and just has bass attributed to Peter. And so if Horg's out and Headland's not playing, okay.
Well, Jurgen said in the comments earlier on that Headland moved to Germany. He lives about 20 minutes away from Jurgen now.
Right. But
so maybe it was just a proximity problem. I mean, I think he played live with them. Maybe he just didn't record, he's got credits, it says, for songwriting on tracks 2 and 7 and bass credited, but does not play.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know if he meant he was going to be completely kind of, I don't know. It's a little odd. In this day and age, distance is less of an issue for guys to do,
especially in Europe. I mean, Germany isn't that far away from Sweden.
Oh yeah, they're like what, 15 minutes apart?
Yeah, but it says that the album was recorded between 2018 and 2020. Jurgen says he's still in the band. I'm sure if it was like one of those things where Peter was periodically working on it, maybe he couldn't fly there every time he was needed. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. One last question for folks. A couple of folks have mentioned that Hypocrisy is pretty new to them, that they liked this album a lot and are looking at exploring some more. Recommendations for folks, if they are new to Hypocrisy's catalog, where should they go, do you think, as a follow-up to this album? If they want to buy or check out another Hypocrisy album, what should be their next one?
I would say this is not a bad one to start with at all, actually. If you like the song short and compact and to the point, you can play these as singles or play as a whole album throughout because it's so consistent. It actually works in both ways, kind of magically. You want to go completely old school and, you don't like melodic death metal as much at all. You can go with the old stuff, the old, but again, it's not Peter singing on those. Well, on the Fourth Dimension, I think that's a transitional album. I think this has a little best of both worlds. Like you get a little bit of the old, and like you said, it's a transitional album, and you get a little bit of the more melodic stuff starts to creep in. But it's hard to know like where your point of origin is, where you want to drop in with the band. Don't start with Catch-22.
No,
I would say, but
for me, I would highly recommend Abducted. That's one of my favorites, and another. Later, it's like just a couple albums away. A Taste of Extreme Divinity is really, really good as well. They just had a really good mixture on that album.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a good one too. Yeah, and Virus is really good. The last album was really good. Disclosure, really good too. But well,
I always thought Abducted was a pretty good one for encapsulating their late 90s era. Some other folks have mentioned that was their favorite in the chat, and again, while I'm a little rusty on their catalog, Abducted was always kind of my default for their best album back then.
Yep, Roswell 47 is a great track. Check that out.
Yep.
They've had a formula, but it was a little bumpy nailing down their concept completely along the way. They had a few weird trials, like misshapen turkey with electrodes.
Yeah. Don't put that in your car player. Whatever you do, you're fucked if you do.
I do want to show one thing before we head out. So I was in the bin, right, pulling out the CD, and it's H, right? So I keep my stuff alphabetically, not crazy like genres like some people do, but so HY, right, and then there's HU next to it. So there's a Huntress CD next to it, and I pulled up next to each other. I'm like, wait a minute, and then I see this.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Where's Lars Ulrich's lawyer when you need him?
I wonder how many more albums that have this sort of structure and layout. It's fun that.
It's your checkerboard obsession all over again, Rick.
Well, since Rick is going to be joining us for a while, we're going to extend him the courtesy of selecting the next pick for next week's album club class discussion for us to delve into, and for all of you folks in the chat that want to participate as well. Rick, what are you going to send? What path are you going to send us down tonight next week?
This is a band that I feel like they've since split up, but they've had a really good run. And I don't hear people talk about this band very much, although I think they're very good. They offer a lot of variety as far as so they're a progressive black metal with folky elements. You're probably thinking of Sweden, maybe something Finnish or no, but it's USA, and that's Cormorant. This is their debut album, Metazoa. And I thought this is definitely one that I think I don't want it to be forgotten about. This is a great band. They've had a great set, a couple of albums. This is one of the, I think, more stronger ones right out the gate. And I think that I don't know. It's definitely I'd be very curious to see what your thoughts are on a project like this. It would offer so much richness and variety and all kinds of stuff going on. So it's, again, if you like that progressive elements, with some black metal and a lot of experimentation, nothing too out there, but it's just done very well. Really good musicianship.
Sweet. We'll check it
out. 2009, by the way, just so you all know.
2009.
Over a decade old. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Alan, how do you like that? We've been rickrolled. And you've all been rickrolled as well.
I'll
Thank
put the
you,
name
Rick.
in the comments just so people know what if they want to write it down. And
If you include the link to a YouTube video, don't click it or you really will get rickrolled.
All right, so there it is. For anybody who wants to check it out, it is on YouTube and it's on Spotify. So if you're curious, checking it out.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, Rick. You're a great addition to the club here, and we'll keep you around as long as you want to hang with us. We appreciate it.
Definitely. You guys are fun, and so is everybody here, and one of the regulars. It's good to be on the other side of it for once and put my jokes face forward instead of behind it.
Well, Alan, do you want to divulge the? I think everybody here knows the programming notes. We have got nothing for next week yet, but
right. Well, we've got Tuesday we may or may not hop on for something quick as we tend to. Wednesday night, Rick has now hooked us up with an interesting sounding album. I've never heard of this band, so I don't. I'll be.
Jim will be back next week too.
Jim
will be back
yep.
as well. Yep.
Oh,
Jim
awesome.
will be back, that will be absolutely great. Of course, this Friday night, we've got Matt from The Dark Path joining us for ranking of all the Halloween albums. So there's 16 of them, folks. It's going to take a while. Grab some popcorn and some pumpkin seeds and tune in. It should be a lot of fun.
Oh, I get it. So we got pumpkins in June and Christmas in July. So you get sort of a theme going with the whole.
Yes. We will be in the holiday spirit.
You show me the thumbnail. See what it looks like. Is this going to be an overload of pumpkins? So it's going to be fun.
there shall be pumpkins aplenty. Absolutely unavoidable.
Awesome.
But yep. So we've got some fun ones coming up for sure.
So yes, in parting, everybody go click on the Dreadful Minutes link in the description, and please subscribe to Mr. Dreadful Rick. We're trying to get him built up, and so we can break through the 1,000 subscriber precipice and actually start posting other things as well on his channel. It would be really nice.
I've been busy making these contest videos for everybody else doing their milestone subs. Coming 3 in 1 month. It's going to be great.
I hope the Halloween show is 4 hours. I'm ready. My body is ready for 4 hours of Halloween.
Tim's got a point. By the time we're finished with it, it really will be Halloween.
Right. Okay, everybody. Thanks again for hanging out with us and joining the album club. We will see you next Wednesday with Cormorant Metazoa. And Rick will be joining us, and Jim from Iwas Recordings will be back with us. And of course, Alan. It's going to be a good time. See you Friday night with The Dark Path, Matt, and Halloween. So roll your eyes now, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Chicken is drunk. See y'all later.
Never going to give you up, Marty.
Oh, you bastard.
Never going to let you down.